You are Overhead Story Channel. Enjoy.
It happened on one of those sharp, wind-cutting nights outside Chicago, early March, the kind that can't decide if it's winter or spring. We were attending a formal business dinner at a private residence. This lavish home with black-tie elegance and hardwood floors that looked polished enough to skate on. The house belonged to a venture capitalist couple who had hosted countless events just like this. Glass after glass, handshake after handshake, back-patting and veiled power moves. Brianna was in her element. It was almost unnerving how easily she slipped into that polished version of herself. All velvet laughs and perfectly timed nods. She wore a deep emerald dress that shimmered when she moved. Her hair was pinned up the way she knew I liked it, though I wasn't sure anymore if she did it for me. At this dinner, she wasn't just a guest. She was a co-host. Her name was on the investor deck. Her name was on the branded napkins. I was there as her support, though it didn't feel like I was part of anything. She'd introduced me to a few people with that quick, polite smile that says, "He's not important, but let's be civil." I'd get a handshake and a tight-lipped, "Oh, you're the husband." And then the conversation would drift back into capital projections, innovation pivots, user acquisition. They were speaking a language I understood but no longer belonged to. I floated between rooms, sipping from the same whiskey for almost an hour. At one point, I found myself standing near the fireplace with no one to talk to, just watching the flames move behind the glass. There was a kind of loneliness that crept in during these events, a reminder that this was her world now, not ours. I stepped into the kitchen to breathe. It was quieter there, though still humming with background chatter and clinking glasses. That's when I saw it. A phone sitting on the marble counter next to a half-empty bottle of Malbec. Not mine, not Brianna's, but familiar. I glanced at it, not to snoop, just instinct. But the screen lit up as if on cue. 2 unread messages. The first, a blurry photo. At first, it looked like nothing. But when I squinted, I saw Brianna, her face unmistakable, tangled in someone's arms. Her expression wasn't one of discomfort. She looked happy. Mate. Familiar. The second message made it worse. It was a short sentence, casual in tone, but with a weight that collapsed my chest. "Last night was perfect. Couldn't stop thinking about you all day." I didn't recognize the photo's background, but I recognized the number immediately. Jake Larson. Jake was in business development. I'd met him a few times, always energetic, always on. Too quick to hug. Too smooth with compliments. The kind of guy who made eye contact just a second too long. I'd seen him around her before. I just never let myself think anything of it. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. Everything I needed to know was already written on that lock screen like a gut punch. I stepped away slowly, and just then, someone entered the kitchen. Brianna. She spotted the phone instantly, and she knew. I saw it in her eyes, the microsecond of panic before she composed herself. "Oh, there it is," she said lightly, sweeping it off the counter as though she were collecting a napkin. Jake always forgets where he puts things. Her voice was calm, but too calm. Calculated. She turned the screen off with a flick, then smiled at me like we were sharing some private joke. "Everything okay?" I nodded. And just like that, she vanished back into the party. Her heels clicking across the tile like punctuation marks on the end of a chapter one didn't realize we were in the middle of. I returned to the main room, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know what else to do. My hands were sweating. My throat was dry. Everyone else was sipping wine, laughing, asking rhetorical questions about market trends. But in my mind, the room had gone silent. I was somewhere else entirely. I watched her from across the room, watched how she leaned in when Jake spoke to her, how she touched his arm when she laughed, how he looked at her like he already knew her far too well. And she didn't pull away. But I didn't cause a scene. I didn't yell, didn't throw a drink, didn't march over and demand an answer. Instead, I watched. I memorized every gesture, every glance, every syllable of their shared body language. I was cataloging a betrayal in real time, and somehow, I was the only one who seemed to notice. Or maybe everyone had noticed. Maybe they just assumed I knew. Maybe I was the only one left pretending this wasn't what it looked like. The rest of the evening unfolded with a weird sense of detachment. I was present, but not there. I shook hands, nodded at jokes I didn't hear, and smiled like someone who hadn't just seen his wife exposed in the soft glow of a text message. At one point, Jake raised a glass and toasted to strong partnerships, and I had to clench my jaw to keep from laughing. Brianna smiled beside him like the toast was about business. But the way he looked at her said otherwise. Later, when we were leaving, she slipped her arm around mine, all smiles and lipstick and warmth. "You okay?" she asked, her breath soft against my shoulder. "Yeah," I said, lying to her and to myself. "I'm good." The truth was, I didn't feel angry. Not yet. I felt hollow, like someone had flipped a switch inside me and everything had gone dim. That night, as she slipped out of her dress and disappeared into the bathroom to remove her makeup, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the hardwood floor. I didn't ask her about the texts. I didn't mention the phone. I didn't even ask about Jake. Because in that moment I knew. I didn't need a confession. I didn't need to hear the details. The truth had already shown itself in a dozen tiny moments. And now it was up to me to decide what came next. That night, after the dinner, I lay awake in bed with my back to Brianna. I could hear the soft rhythm of her breathing, could feel the subtle shifts of her weight on the mattress, but I couldn't bring myself to move. I stared at the ceiling fan, watching it spin slowly, endlessly, like the loop my thoughts had gotten trapped in. That photo, that message, Jake, her, and me frozen, breathing, drowning in silence. My mind wasn't racing with rage. It wasn't even panic. It was inventory. Every inconsistency, every shrug I had dismissed, every weird coincidence I'd smoothed over just to keep the peace. And there had been so many that I'd shoved into mental drawers and locked away. But now, those drawers were bursting open, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. Like the Boston trip. Or was it Denver? I remembered that one clearly. She said she had to fly to Boston for a last-minute strategy summit. I didn't think twice. Brianna was always in motion. But a few days later, I was looking through our travel rewards account for something unrelated when I saw it. A Delta e-ticket for a round trip to Denver. I asked her about it casually, and she blinked, paused a beat too long, then said it must have been a flight mix-up. They routed me through Denver. Her tone was easy, confident. She even laughed about it. I believed her, because I wanted to. Now I knew better. Another time, she told me she was staying at a conference hotel in St. Paul, and I believed that too, until our bank statement showed a charge for a boutique hotel in Minneapolis. One I'd remembered from a romantic getaway ad we'd seen a year prior. She claimed it was the Overflow Hotel, nothing available closer to the venue. I nodded, told her it was fine. But that hotel had double occupancy suites only. I remembered the little things too. The scent of cologne, subtle, woodsy, unfamiliar, that clung to her scarf when she came home late one evening in January. She laughed it off, said it was from the Uber driver, that she hated it. But I found the same scarf weeks later with that same smell, and I remember thinking it wasn't fading. It had stayed. Her phone, too, had transformed into something different. It used to be an open object, left on the nightstand, screen up, easy to glance at when it lit up. But now it was always silenced, face down, never far from her. She used to ask me to plug it in while she was in the shower. She didn't anymore. She used to leave her laptop open on the kitchen island. Now it was always closed, password locked, even when she was just going to the bathroom. There were also retreats. She'd beg *N attending these so-called personal growth weekends. I supported her at first. Who doesn't want their partner to grow? But it became a pattern. She would leave Friday morning and return Sunday night drained but elated. She'd never talk specifics, just vague talk of team workshops and speakers. No materials, no receipts. I asked once what the seminar was called. She said it was private. Invite only. Her tone made it clear I wasn't to press further. I started to pay attention to details, things I would have never thought twice about before. She wore a new watch for a few weeks, sleek, masculine. Then it was gone. but the faint tan line remained for days afterward, like a fingerprint of someone else's presence on her skin. I once found a box of chocolates in the pantry from a boutique she had always claimed was overpriced and overrated. Half the box was gone. The worst was a voicemail I overheard by accident. She had left her Bluetooth speaker connected in the bathroom one morning while she showered. I was brushing my teeth when it pinged. A voice message began to play over the speaker before I had time to process it. "Hey, just thinking about last night. I can still smell you on my skin." That's all I heard before the message cut off. She came out of the shower moments later, saw my face, and instantly went into spin mode. "Oh my God!" she laughed, toweling her hair. "That was for my friend Rachel. She's seeing this guy from Boston and they're obsessed with each other. She accidentally sent it to me." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But there was something about the way she said it. Too fast, too smooth. And now, in the wake of that dinner and that message, it all fit together. Her patterns weren't just habits. They were evidence. There was also how she started to talk about me in public. I noticed this change during a dinner with friends a few months back. The conversation turned to relationships, and someone joked about how hard it was to stay romantic after years of marriage. Brianna laughed and said, "Well, some people just become roommates after a while." Then she glanced at me with that smile she used when she wanted to act like it was just teasing. Everyone laughed. I did too. But deep down, something inside me folded. After that night, I started to check the calendar more closely. I started to watch her leave the house like a stranger would. I noticed how she didn't say goodbye the same way anymore. No more forehead kisses, no lingering hands. Just a rushed "see you later" as she grabbed her bag and disappeared out the door. Once, I got up early and offered to drive her to the train station. She declined, said she liked the quiet time in the Uber. I knew then what I had started to suspect for weeks. It wasn't about the Uber. It was about control, distance. She didn't want me in the picture, not even for 10 minutes. And yet, I still wasn't ready to confront her. I told myself I needed more. I needed irrefutable proof. I needed to be sure because the consequences of being wrong were devastating. You don't blow up your marriage because your wife wears perfume she didn't use to wear. You don't accuse someone of betrayal because of a watch tan or a voicemail. You wait. You wait until your heart has no more excuses left to offer. So that's what I did. I waited. I observed. I stopped asking questions. And I just listened. To the silences. To the careful word choices. To the rehearsed alibis delivered with too much confidence and just a little too much charm. And the more I watched, the more I saw the space between us grow into something I could no longer step across. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want justice. I wanted truth. Because without it, I couldn't begin to mourn what we'd lost, or what she had destroyed. That's when the camera app came into play. The moment that changed everything. The confirmation I'd been waiting for, in pixels and motion and undeniable reality. But that's part of what came next. Because the pattern wasn't just about her behavior. It was about mine too. The silence I had maintained for too long. The lies I told myself so I wouldn't have to face the one that mattered most. That it was already over. It happened on a Saturday night, one of those early spring evenings where the cold lingers even though the calendar says it's over. Brianna had told me she was leaving for a 2-day leadership seminar. Something about strategic resilience, hosted by one of her former colleagues in a lakeside lodge 3 hours north. She packed a slim suitcase, her work laptop, and left me with a kiss on the cheek and the words, "Don't wait up. Cell service will probably be spotty." I almost believed her, but I didn't say much. I helped her load the car. I even wished her luck. And as she pulled out of the driveway, I felt the weight of every unspoken suspicion settle in the pit of my stomach like wet concrete. It was only hours later, close to midnight, when the truth began to unravel on its own. Our home security system pinged my phone. Emotion alert. Backdoor. That wasn't unusual. Sometimes a raccoon wandered across the deck. Sometimes a gust of wind blew the motion light into action. Still, I opened the camera app, half expecting nothing. But there she was, Brianna, stepping into our house through the back door. She wasn't alone. Jake was with her. He entered like he belonged there, like it wasn't his first time. The feed was grainy but unmistakable. The way she moved, the way she smiled at him as she closed the door behind them, it was too familiar, too practiced. She had changed out of her usual business attire. Now she wore a loose gray sweater, jeans, and no shoes, like she had come home to unwind. Jake was in a hoodie and joggers, holding a bag slung over one shoulder and a bottle of wine in the other hand. They looked comfortable, casual, domestic. I watched, frozen, as they moved through the hallway. She led him like a hostess welcoming a guest into a place that belonged to both of them. In one frame they paused and they kissed. Not quickly, not sneakily, slowly, like it wasn't a secret. I remember the way her hand touched his face. I'd seen her do that to me once, years ago, when she used to brush her fingers along my cheekbone before leaning in. But this wasn't mine anymore. None of this was. I stared at the footage in disbelief, a sick sort of calm washing over me. Not rage, not shock, just confirmation, the kind you don't come back from. I saved the clip, backed it up to a private folder, and turned my phone screen off. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch in the dark, barely breathing, waiting for the sun to rise and my thoughts to make sense. The next morning, I drove home. I told myself I was just going to see, just confirm. But part of me already knew. When I walked through the front door, the house was quiet. Still, there was a faint smell of coffee in the air, like someone had made a fresh pot not long ago. I took in every detail. There were 2 wine glasses on the nightstand beside our bed. A pair of unfamiliar sneakers, men's, size 11, resting just inside the mudroom by the door. One still had a crushed train ticket wedged inside. I pulled it out and unfolded it. Jake Larson, Milwaukee to Chicago. Friday evening. Trash. Half tucked into the bin. I didn't need to go looking for his overnight bag, but I found it anyway, shoved behind the couch. His charger was still plugged into the wall in the guest room. And then there was Brianna, still asleep. Our bed was made neatly on her side. Hers. The other side was untouched, like she hadn't even pretended to sleep next to me. Her hair was pulled up. Her makeup from the night before was smudged. She looked peaceful, almost serene, like someone who had finally made a decision and no longer felt the need to lie about it. She didn't hear me come in. I stood in the doorway and watched her for a few seconds longer than I should have. My mind split itself in two. Part of me wanted to shake her awake and demand answers. The other part, quiet, hollow, finished, wanted to walk away without a word. I did neither. I walked back downstairs, poured myself a cup of the coffee she had brewed earlier, and sat at the kitchen island, facing the backyard where the camera had caught her betrayal. I didn't speak to her when she woke up. She came downstairs, clearly startled to see me home. Her reaction was flawless. Confused, then mildly flustered, then concerned. "Hey! I thought you were going to be at your brother's all weekend?" I shrugged. Plans changed. She paused, watching me. I watched her too, not just her face, but the micro-movements. The subtle tension in her jaw, the way her fingers curled around the strap of her robe. "You okay?" she asked finally, her voice so even it made my skin crawl. I nodded. "Just tired." We didn't say anything else. That was the thing. In that silence, everything was already being said. She moved around the kitchen like it was just another Sunday morning. Made eggs, checked her phone, flipped through a magazine, and I sat there with the footage playing on repeat inside my mind like a private horror film. I didn't confront her that day, not out of fear, out of strategy. The damage was done, and I didn't want excuses. I wanted the full picture. Something she couldn't spin, couldn't deny, couldn't weep her way out of. That night, after she went to bed, I watched the security feed again. Frame by frame. I clipped the clearest stills. I exported the clip. I added timestamps. I even ***ed the motion detection log from our system showing her entry and his. It was methodical, cold, but it had to be, because this wasn't about drama. It wasn't about rage. It was about making the truth undeniable not just to her, but to me. For the first time in our marriage, I had absolute clarity. And with it came a terrifying kind of relief. Over the next few days, I began gathering more. Text logs, cloud backups, old photos she had once sent to Jake that she forgot were stored in her iCloud trash. Notes, receipts, hotel check-ins. A digital trail that painted a story they never thought anyone would piece together. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not family, not friends, not even my closest confidants. This was something I had to carry alone, for now. I didn't want advice. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted resolve. And as I collected the truth, something unexpected happened. I stopped blaming myself, stopped wondering if I had failed, stopped asking what I could have done differently, because the answer had been staring me in the face. Nothing. This wasn't about me. It never had been. Jake hadn't seduced a happy woman into cheating. Brianna hadn't fallen by accident. They had chosen this, repeatedly, with intention, with coordination, with deception sharpened into an art form. They had rehearsed their stories. They had laughed at my back. They had written me out of my own life while I was still living it. But now I had the truth, and I was going to use it, not to destroy them, but to free myself. Because once you see the truth clearly, you can't unsee it. You can't go back. You can only move forward. But first, there was something I needed to do. Something that would make it impossible for either of them to ever lie about it again. The opportunity was already on the calendar. And I knew exactly where I'd make it count. I didn't sleep much the week after I saw them on camera. Not out of grief. Not even out of anger. I couldn't sleep because something had clicked inside me. Some quiet, unshakable resolve I hadn't felt in years. It was like I had finally stopped spinning in confusion and started walking in a straight line. And that line was leading somewhere. Brianna moved through our house as if nothing had happened. Her mornings were filled with chirpy updates about investor calls and new brand partnerships. Her evenings were spent half watching documentaries or reading leadership books by the fireplace. She still laughed at nothing and checked her phone like it held the fate of the universe. I catch her texting, then flipping the screen down before I could glimpse the name. But I didn't ask. I didn't confront. I didn't even flinch. I played my part. Quiet, distant, the husband too busy to notice. And that gave me space to think. What I wanted wasn't revenge. I didn't want to torch her life just to feel better for an hour. I wanted the kind of clarity that couldn't be spun or walked back. I wanted a clean break, free from denial and gaslighting. I wanted the people she'd lied to, the ones she had so carefully charmed, to see her truth. And fate handed me an opening. Brianna had been preparing for a major investor dinner in Detroit. It was all she talked about for weeks. Her team had landed a chance to pitch to 3 heavyweight VC firms. Firms that could take her startup from regional darling to national juggernaut. The dinner was formal, invite-only, and being live-streamed for extended stakeholders and potential digital backers. Her presentation would be the centerpiece. "This is make or break," she told me one night while pouring herself a glass of red wine. "If we nail this, we get Series B locked before summer." I nodded. "You'll do great." She smiled, kissed my cheek. "Thanks for believing in me." That was the moment I knew exactly what I had to do. She had chosen to hide behind her image, to build an empire on a version of herself that wasn't real. The truth had no place in her world. So I decided to put it on the stage she had built. I already had the evidence, texts, photos, the security footage, even emails Jake had been foolish enough to send from his company address. What I needed was access. So I began researching the venue. The event was hosted at a historic hotel ballroom in downtown Detroit, marble columns, crystal chandeliers, 5-star everything. The AV production was contracted to a third-party vendor I recognized. I had worked with them before during a corporate seminar years ago. They used a centralized cloud-based slide management system for large-scale events, with remote editing access for speakers and technicians. I reached out, pretending to be a local AV freelancer in need of back-end login info to troubleshoot a rendering issue for a mock event deck. It wasn't hard, just a few emails, a spoof domain, and a well-written request. Within 2 days, I had limited back-end credentials. From there, I waited for Brianna to upload her final slide deck. She did 2 days before the dinner. A sleek, 16-slide presentation with animations, embedded logos, and one final thank you slide that read, "Thank you for believing in us. Let's build the future together." Perfect. I downloaded the file, copied it, and replaced the final slide with a new version that looked identical at first. But 5 seconds after displaying the thank you message, it would fade into something else entirely. **TS of their texts. A frame from the security video. Jake's arm around her, her hand on his chest. A timestamp from our hallway cam. Then a brief series of clips, cut with silence, showing them entering our house. A train stub with his name. One of her emails that read, "Let's keep it quiet till after Detroit, then we'll figure it out." I built the transition cleanly, nothing crude, nothing sensationalized. Just the truth, presented plainly. The final screen was black with white text. "Trust is not a pitch. It's a choice." I saved the deck and uploaded it back into the system using her original file name. From the back end, it would appear unchanged unless previewed start to finish. No one would bother, especially Brianna. She was too focused on the performance to recheck something she thought was already locked in. The morning of the dinner, she was a bundle of energy. Iron-pressed blazer, bold lipstick, power heels. She had rehearsed the talk so many times that she could practically recite it in her sleep. She gave me a quick hug before heading out, smelling like vanilla and ambition. "I'll call you after," she said with that electric grin. "Wish me luck." "Good luck," I said, and then she was gone. I didn't follow her to Detroit. I didn't need to be there physically to witness the unraveling. I had done what I came to do. The fuse was lit. I just had to wait. That evening, I went for a long walk through the old part of town. I passed brick buildings and shuttered shops and diners that smelled like melted cheese and bacon grease. The world kept turning, as it always does. My phone stayed silent. Around 7:40 p.m. I checked the live stream on the event page. The screen was filled with soft jazz and a countdown clock. 10 minutes to go. I watched until she took the stage. She looked calm, controlled, powerful. Brianna thanked everyone for coming. She introduced herself, her team, and the vision behind their work. She talked about disrupting inefficiency, creating value, bridging gaps between investors and innovators. Her confidence was magnetic, her cadence polished. She moved through the first few slides with ease. Slide 5, Momentum Metrics. Slide 6, User Growth. Slide 7, Funding Roadmap. Slide 8, Partnerships. Then came the last one. "Before I close," she said, "I want to thank all of you for believing in what we're building. This last slide is a small gesture of gratitude for your time and your trust." The slide appeared. "Thank you." There was a pause. Polite applause began. Then the screen flickered, and the thank you faded into the first image. The applause faltered. Someone coughed. Phones were raised. I watched the live stream freeze for half a second, buffering before skipping ahead. The feed cut to the stage camera. I saw her stop, blink. Her voice faltered. She turned to look at the screen. Then I ended the stream. I didn't need to see the rest. Whatever followed. Shocked gasps. Whispering investors. Jake's face crumbling in real time. That wasn't mine to carry. I had done what I came to do. It wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't a meltdown. It was a mirror. And she was standing in front of it now. For the first time, maybe ever, Brianna couldn't talk her way out of it. In the days after the dinner, the world didn't explode. It unraveled quietly, precisely, devastatingly. I didn't hear from Brianna that night. No messages, no missed calls, just silence, which, oddly, was louder than any confrontation could have been. I imagined her standing in the center of that Detroit ballroom, the screen behind her still flickering with exposed texts and pixelated stills, the air electric with disbelief. I pictured the long pause after the reveal, the guests exchanging glances, the awkward shuffling of napkins and silverware, the frantic search for an explanation. I imagined Jake, sitting somewhere near the front, probably nursing a drink he didn't even like, caught between the applause and the fallout. I imagined the moment his name flashed on screen, the moment it became clear to everyone that this wasn't just a glitch or a joke or a mistake. This was real. Mate. Meticulously timed. Designed. By morning, the clips had already surfaced online. They weren't full videos, just fragments, 15-second screen recordings, choppy and vertical, posted with vague captions like, "Something wild happened at a VC dinner in Detroit tonight." But it didn't take long for the Reddit threads and Twitter gossip to catch fire. By lunchtime, people were dissecting Brianna's facial expressions, trying to read Jake's body language, speculating on how long it had been going on. There was a clip of her frozen on stage, blinking into the glare of the screen, mouth parted like she was about to speak, but didn't. That clip got thousands of views in hours. Her company, once praised for its fast growth and polished leadership, went into lockdown mode. The official statement from the board was generic. "We're aware of the incident at the recent event and are conducting an internal review. We are committed to maintaining the integrity of our leadership and the trust of our investors." But behind the scenes, things were already crumbling. A former employee leaked that the board had called an emergency session before Brianna even returned from Detroit. Several investors, ones I'd heard her talk about with excitement and admiration, began pulling out quietly, transferring their interest to competitors, citing a misalignment of values. Jake, for his part, went dark. No new LinkedIn activity. No tweets. No presence. Just a quiet disappearance. Rumor was he'd been placed on unpaid leave pending an HR investigation. He had used company resources to book at least one of the hotels. One of the texts shown in the reveal had included a **T of an internal calendar invite. A mistake he never expected would be seen. And Brianna? She called me the next afternoon. When I saw her name on my screen, I didn't flinch. I let it ring twice before I answered, my voice steady. "Hello." There was a pause on the other end, long enough that I thought maybe she'd hung up. Then her voice, small but composed, "I just need to know why?" It wasn't a scream, not an accusation, just a question, fragile and exhausted. I didn't answer right away. "Because I needed you to see it," I said finally. Another silence. "I didn't think you'd do something like that," she whispered. I nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she still didn't get it. "You thought I'd let you lie until it became the truth." "No," she said quickly. I didn't think it would go that far." "It went further than you think," I replied. "But not because of me." Her voice trembled. "Do you know what you've done?" "Yes," I said. "I've ended it." She didn't call again that day, but the texts came in waves. First, there was the denial. "You misread everything. That wasn't what it looked like." Then the justification. "Things between us haven't felt right in a long time. I didn't know how to talk to you." Then blame. "You humiliated me in front of everyone I've worked with for 10 years. Do you know what that costs me?" Then the pleas. "Can we please talk in person? Just once?" I didn't respond. The next day, a hand-delivered letter arrived at the house. Messy handwriting on an envelope with no return address. Inside, a 3-page letter in her familiar looping script. She said she was sorry, said it started innocently, said Jake had been a friend during a hard season and things blurred. She called the dinner incident cruel, but admitted she had lied to me. She asked for compassion, then mercy, then at the very end, just closure. I read it once. Then I placed it in the drawer next to the printed security footage, the call logs, and the backup drive. I wasn't keeping it for sentiment. I was keeping it for history, a record of the unraveling. That week, she left the company. Officially, it was a leave of absence. But insiders leaked that she had been asked to step down quietly. The board needed someone who could salvage what was left of the brand's reputation. And Brianna, once its strongest asset, had become its biggest liability. Her name was removed from the team page within 48 hours. The media headlines were polite but sharp. Promising startup faces crisis after leadership scandal. Business forums picked apart her downfall, speculated about the nature of the affair, guessed how many investors had known. Someone even found an old podcast where she had talked about radical transparency in leadership. That quote made its way into memes, articles, even a late-night comedy monologue. It was brutal, but I didn't feel vindicated. I felt tired, because the truth is, even when you win this kind of war, the losses pile up quietly. There were no cheers, no standing ovations, just silence and mess and shattered trust. Friends started reaching out, some to offer support, some just to gossip under the guise of concern. One of her former colleagues messaged me, "I had no idea. She always talked about you like you were her compass." Another wrote, "I hope you're okay. No one deserves to be blindsided like that." I didn't respond to most of them. I wasn't looking for validation. I wasn't looking to be the wounded hero. I just wanted the noise to stop. Then came Jake. 3 days after the dinner, he emailed me from a personal account. Short, cowardly. "Mark, I owe you an apology. I never meant to hurt you. I made mistakes. I hope one day you can forgive me." That was it. No ownership. No details. Just a few soft words meant to sound noble. I archived it. No reply, because some things don't deserve a response. Meanwhile, Brianna kept trying. More letters. A voicemail. One night, she even drove to the house. I didn't answer the door. I just watched from the upstairs window as she stood on the porch in the dark, arms wrapped around herself, looking like a stranger who didn't know how she got there. She didn't knock. Eventually, she turned and walked away. And still, I didn't feel triumph. Just space. Just the slow, grinding realization that I had built a life around someone who had never planned to protect it. But now that life was mine again. Not hers. Not ours. Mine. In the fallout, Brianna's world shrank fast. Within days, news of her resignation and the dinner scandal had circulated through forums, newsletters, even LinkedIn gossip threads.